We welcome you to this afternoon's session on preclinical and clinical testing of INS. We would like to remind you that for each speaker they have a total of 20 minutes, but what we're doing is we would like to work out on this one after each speaker to provide 2 minutes for questioning. So for each of the speakers, when they... For clarification of fact, okay. All right. And so for the speakers, when you see that 3-minute warning, be sure to close at the end of 3 minutes to give us that 2 minutes for clarification of fact. Our first speaker for this afternoon is Lou Ritter. He's co-founder and first elected president, now president emeritus of the American E-Liquid Manufacturing Standards Association. Representing AEMSA, Lou presented before the US FDA 5 times, met with the OMB, OIRA twice, and spoke at industry-leading conferences. Lou, we'll give you the podium now.
Good afternoon. Hope everybody had a nice lunch. Thank you very much to NAS and to the committee for inviting us here today. One of the things that we feel is absolutely essential as we proceed down your remit is to understand the absolute requisite product knowledge to some extent. So what I'm going to do today, one of the things I'm a consumer volunteer. I'm not in the industry. I'm not a scientist. I quit smoking. I smoked for over 30 years. I quit with electronic cigarettes, haven't touched a cigarette in 7 years. And as you can see, I got slightly motivated to try to see what I could do to advance tobacco harm reduction or help in this process towards advancing tobacco harm reduction. I wear a lot of hats. I'm one of the co-founders and was the first president of AEMSA, the American E-Liquid Manufacturing Standards Association. I'm also the founder and president of E-Research Foundation, which is a 501c3 foundation designed to be a collective funding mechanism for the industry to advance science targeted towards peer review and publication. The industry has not really done much funding, but there is a plentiful amount of information on that website. I encourage you all to look at it. I've also since been asked to chair the American National Standards Institute TAG, Technical Action Group on Vapor and Vapor Products, as a participant in the international process, or ISO. The gentleman speaking after me, John Bellinger, and his partner, Brandon Ward, are the administrators of that tag. So in the unique position that I have inadvertently developed what I kind of call a zoom lens approach, and I realize that it's absolutely essential as we go forward. And that is to zoom into the micro and really focus in on the details of any specific component or factor, whether it be research or technical development, of any aspect of it. But then it becomes imperative to zoom back out and see that micro in the context of the macro, of the bigger picture. If we don't, I think we lose the forest for the trees. So what I'd like to do today, from my perspective, I'd like to give a quick introduction to the AEMSA standards. I'm not going to get into the specific details, mostly because they're on our website, and one of our subject matter experts, Kurt Kistler, will be speaking immediately after John Bellinger. He'll get into some of the more of the chemistry aspects of it, and he'll do a better job than I could. But then I'm going to kind of roll into a bunch of overview kind of points that have to do with science, that from my kind of unique perspectives and different hats, I've seen how this zoom lens approach really comes into play, and I'd like to share that with you with a couple of bullet points that I hope you'll use as takeaways, both in terms of what this zoom lens approach looks like and why it's so important, but also to set the stage for the real technical experts who will follow me. John Bellinger of Evolve actually is the inventor of power regulation and temperature control. He introduced safety features into every single device that you see that has electronics on it. So any device on the planet that you see that has variable watts or temperature control, short circuit protection, over-under charge protection, reverse battery polarity, smart charging, that was all introduced globally by Mr. Bellinger, who will be speaking next. And so what you see out there is a lot of clones from China. Most of it is just, can we make a copy? It's like someone trying to copy a Renoir. You know, they don't have the engineering experience and knowledge as we're John has really pulled it apart, and he's going to share that with you. So let's take a quick look and go forward here. Where's my slide? Did I go the wrong way? Should I have hit up? I hit down. Right. Okay. So AEMSA was co-founded by two consumers, myself and Mr. Link Williams. It's a 501c6. It was launched in October of 2012. It was basically designed for the American e-liquid or the American market. And we've had discussions about doing some things internationally, but it never actually quite got there yet. We have 3 highly credentialed subject matter experts. Our membership right now is somewhere around 25, 26 members. We've got more in the application stream. And this is an interesting takeaway from this as well. While the industry did not necessarily jump on board with AEMSA over the last 4 years, it's unquestionable that AEMSA changed the game. When we launched in 2012, there was nobody talking about quality verifications, accuracy of content, analysis of the quality of the nicotine, quality of the other diluents, clean room environments, tamper evidence, childproof caps, labeling issues, all of the things that we cover, no one was talking about it really anywhere. There were a couple of manufacturers that were focusing on it, some of the big boys, but for the most part, the industry was not. Now globally, we see everybody talking about this. It doesn't mean it's universally adopted, but we see a lot more focus in this direction 4 years later, and I think that has a lot to do with the example that we set. So AEMSA is a living document, because obviously we're learning more every day. The most current version is posted on the website. I'll have a link to it later in the presentation. And it's based on commercial food manufacturing. Where did we start? We looked at the FDA commercial food manufacturing standards, and we went through one by one and used as many as we could possibly fit into the vernacular of this industry. We used GMP principles. Then we brought in subject matter experts who helped us develop and refine the nicotine issues. And we also had a lot of input from the practical application from our members. So we started AEMSA based on what we call the 5 core principles. And we established this the very first time we ever met. We have a responsibility of verifying the accuracy of the nicotine content in the products, ensuring the quality of all the ingredients in e-liquid, clean, sanitary, and safe preparation of products, safe packaging and delivery of products, transparency into the monitoring and verification process. And as you can see, the articles of our standards fit right into this structure. So again, I'm not going to go into the micro details. I want to kind of move past this relatively quickly. It's all on the website, and Dr. Kistler will be up later. But we go into Article 1. You can see we have accuracy of nicotine. Everything's got to be verified, whether it's coming all the way back to the source nicotine. So we've got to be constantly checking the accuracy. We don't want anybody measuring anything until we've verified. We don't want people measuring off of a target. If they're getting a reduced concentration, pure nicotine is 1,000 milligrams or 100%, 99%, 98%, whatever it may be. If they're getting 100 milligrams, it's a target. We don't want them measuring off somebody else's measurement. We want to have that titrated so they know the actual, so that they're measuring accurately, so that the consumer end product is going to be accurate. We insist on accurate verifiable measuring equipment like NIST, ASTM. We have a tolerance of plus or minus 10%, which is what the pharmaceutical industry uses. And we have maximum allowable content in refillable nicotine of 36 milligrams. You will see in some of the cigalikes and their equivalents higher levels that go into the 45 to 50 range, and that has to do with power levels. Again, we'll touch base on this a little bit later, but AEMSA doesn't really deal with cigalikes and their equivalents. We're a refillable organization manufacturing standards. And the same thing for unflavored DIY nicotine for measuring if someone's selling for a consumer to mix their own. All of the quality standards apply, just not the maximum content. Article 2, again, we get into the specific chemistry of the actual nicotine. I don't want to get too far into this because Dr. Kistler is going to get into it, and all the details are on our website. We also get into the quality of VGPG, the major diluents, and we insist on USP certified through the entire chain of custody. If someone buys 100 milligram nicotine that's been reduced, we want to see evidentiary documentation that the company that did that reduction used USP certified. They cracked the seal on certified VGPG. When our manufacturers do further dilutions and mixing their liquid, we want evidentiary documentation that they're using USP certified. They're cracking the seal. Listing of items, we have some exclusions. Again, I'm not going to get into the details. They're on our website. Things that we just don't know enough about. Vitamins, drugs, caffeine, there are a variety of whole tobacco alkaloids, There are a variety of things that we just don't have enough science on. We just excluded them straight across the board. And of course, records, process, and traceability. Now we go into the clean room environments, manufacturing environment, hand washing, sanitation, health and illness requirements and reporting and restrictions from the lab environment, no eating, smoking, drinking, vaping in the laboratory, hair restraints, animals, storage of poisonous or toxic chemicals, separation, very similar to food issues, and of course, PPE. We go into Article 4. We get into some of the issues that we introduced long before there was any regulation: child-proof caps, tamper evidence, labeling, which has now all been supplemented by the FDA mandated, and of course delivery. We want to make sure that we have protections for mailman and anything that could happen in the mail. So we have leak-proof packaging, safe handling information must be included in every package. Within the organization, we have certain information access that has to be available to the organization. We have an external inspector that we engage who is actually credentialed to do some pharma level inspections, and he does that in addition to what he does for AEMSA. So we've got certain process and records, unfettered access, and so forth. And then we also have requirements that the members agree to when they join AEMSA, that they will provide certain information to the consumers when asked. Again, the details are on. So now we're going to get into this the zoom lens, micro, macro thing. And the idea, again, is I'm not a scientist. I'm not going to try to educate you on science. There's no point. But I have learned from this zoom lens approach, this going into the micro and pulling back out to the macro. And I think that these are things that hopefully you'll take away as just possible highlights to keep in mind and consider. You'll have these slides, and it also acts as an entryway to Mr. Bellinger and Dr. Kistler's presentations. So we need to look at some of these variables. In these devices, there are a plentitude of variables. And with simple mathematics, the different variables combine, you end up with a mathematical progression which compounds the potential statistical outcomes, because variables on top of variables. So we need to look very carefully. We've seen science that has progressed based on inappropriate protocols. And it's very important for us to realize that that can taint the overall picture. Now, I realize your remit is to try to separate that out. We're hoping to bring you some of the technical information to at least point you towards some of the issues. We could do this all day long, is just present all day long, and we still wouldn't be able to get there comprehensively, but we hope to point you in the right direction. User profiles, puffing patterns, puff durations, puff intervals, aerosol deposition. Vaping profiles are different from smoking profiles. You cannot just assume that everything that you've seen and read and used in smoking applies to vaping. They're completely different. Power levels and temperatures. I'll let Mr. Bellinger get into that. You're going to get an education, trust me. Realistic device and atomizer combinations, what we call systems. This is a very important concept, systems, and I'm going to come back to this over and over again. Systems is very important when it comes to science. You change one component, and you're going to potentially change the outcome. Different results as you change the combinations. It would be like a recipe or anything else where you change the specification somewhere, you're going to get different outcome. Effective wicking issues, we've heard some talk about that this morning already. Again, I'm going to let the experts get back into that, but a dry puff phenomena is where there's not enough liquid, and what happens, you're generating a chemical that a vapor would not normally be exposed to. And this is a taste terrible situation. Nobody is going to repeat a dry puff. You're not even going to get a full puff. You taste it instantly and you're done. No way. But you'll get the science of it. Device safety features, again, Mr. Bellinger will take care of that. Ohm's law for mechanical devices and cigalikes that don't have electronic power regulation. Again, I'm going to let Mr. Bellinger take care of that. Electronics, boost circuits, power regulation, temperature control, all of this is in John's purview. This is a very important section. Again, it's an entryway to Dr. Kistler, but the generic aspects where there's a lot of misinformation out there. Skin exposure absorption, watch for the actual nicotine content. We see terms like 3 milligrams per milliliter, that's approximately 0.3% nicotine. 12 milligrams per milliliter is approximately 1.2%. I have had 100 milligram nicotine or 10% nicotine on my skin. I go wash it off within a couple of minutes, I never even knew it was there. If I leave it on my hands for 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, I'm going to start to feel like I had too much caffeine. Is it toxic? Yes. I mean, high concentrations of nicotine is unquestionably toxic. We know that. But at the levels at which the typical consumer is using these things, it's substantially diluted. It's really most of what you're looking at in those bottles is diluent, vegetable glycerin and propylene glycol. I am not saying by any stretch of the imagination that this is not a risk. It is. What I encourage you to do is to focus on what is the risk. You're the experts. You're going to know as long as you're looking at the right factors, the right concentrations, the right variables. So another thing that we've seen over and over again is this discussion of oral toxicity, ingesting the potential lethal doses. And we've seen the number 60 milligrams come up over and over again. In reality, that's from an 1856 pharmacology textbook. We now have current numbers that tell us that it may well be 1,000 milligrams, it might even be 1,500 milligrams. It needs new evaluation, update for accuracy, and I hope this becomes part of your remit to at least guide and advise the FDA in this direction. I strongly encourage you to pull up this slide from home or where your office is and take a look at these 2 citations that I'm providing to you. They're extremely relevant, and I hope they point you in the right direction, give you a good start. E-liquid in terms of oral ingestion. E-liquid tastes nothing like it smells. Whatever you've heard, seen, read, I'm telling you it's wrong. It's very simple. Take a drop on your finger and taste it. It tastes god-awful. Any vapor will tell you they've gotten liquid in their mouth and it tastes terrible. You're talking about a liquid concentrate versus a dispersed aerosol. They smell good, they taste terrible. And we've seen from theory from medical professionals that indicate that if you get a lot of this liquid in your mouth, it's going to initiate gag reflex, and that swallowing will likely initiate regurgitation. Again, you're the experts. Okay, got to move along faster. What happened here? Where'd I go? We got that one. Okay, these I'm going to move through relatively quickly. This is important: smoking cessation, efficacy, dynamics. First-time vapors usually try 20 to 30 different flavors to find 2 or 3 that are subjectively satisfactory. If they stay with just vaping, not dual use, within 2 to 3 weeks their olfactory and taste senses restore, and they usually don't like that flavor anymore, and they start looking into other flavors. Once again, they have to try the 20 or 30 to find 2 or 3. Smokers tend to stick to one brand, one flavor. It's always the same. Vapor's completely different. Different atomizers, combinations create different vapor character. What does that mean? If you had a piece of steak and you cooked it in an aluminum pan, a cast iron pan, under a broiler, in an oven for roasting, on a barbecue, they could all be the same temperature, but the character of that steak's going to be completely different depending on how you cooked it. It's an oversimplification, but that's what you're dealing with in vaping. Flavors vary. Any recipe differs. Different suppliers, different amounts of flavoring. Flavor is not flavor from one place to another. And here's a big issue. Single device liquid pairings may facilitate research consistency, but it's never going to replicate real world options that yield substantially higher anecdotal cessation levels. True cessation efficacy can only be accurately evaluated by expanding the device atomizer combinations and e-liquid spectrum options, as all liquids and systems are 100% subjective as it relates to satisfaction, flavor, physical sensations, throat hit, and so on. I'm going to go through these. I'm just going to leave them up here for you. They're on the website, on the slide deck. Some lessons from recent years about the relevance of different protocols, making good protocols, uniform product usage, various use surveys versus use surveys ever tried versus actual use. That's a very important distinction. Kids are inherently experimental. Gateway. There's no evidence that we know of so far that shows that there really is a gateway. It's a concern. I respect the concern, but so far there's zero evidence that it's happening. Flavorings to market to youth, you can read about that on there. There's some very important things. I hope you will take another look at that. This is one of the most important slides in the deck. All I'm going to say, I hope you look at it, tobacco harm reduction to harm minimization. And I think there's some very valid points in here. Snap a photo, look at it on the deck later. But I think this is where we need to be focusing. How do we get from harm reduction to harm minimization? And with that, I'm going to say thank you very much. We've got just some other resources. We've got 900 studies up on both the AEMSA and the ERF website. I encourage you to go look at the Direct from Experts on the ERF website, and specifically the Dr. Derek Yatch. I provide a link there, but there's a lot of content. You're dealing with real non-industry experts. Their bios are there. The individuals' videos are there. There's a lot of information. AEMSA Standards, our public comment submissions, other resources from other organizations, industry and non-industry. There's a lot of good information on that page. And thank you very much. Can I answer any questions? Yes?
One quick point of clarification. You indicated you had 25 members or so. What's the catch? You know, if everybody that is in this business
We don't have an accurate number. We've seen the numbers fluctuate. In the last year, we've seen some attrition. There have been some people in anticipation of the arduous nature of the PMTA application process. I would have loved to see every single e-liquid manufacturer adopt these standards. But when we posted them initially, we said, look, join us or don't. You know, we provide the guidance. We'll help you to get there. We have the technical experts, the subject matter experts, and the verification process. But if you don't want to join, use them. They make sense. And the reality is, in the 4 years that we've been out, nobody's tried to improve them. Nobody's been able to. We've had these evaluated by CGMP specialists, and they've said that you're basically there. You may need some additional documentation. But our goal was to create a starting point, never an ending point. It was always meant to be a starting point. And what I'm most proud about is to see how it changed the discussion globally and how many people who are not AEMSA members are starting to focus on clean rooms, titration, verification, product analysis, and into some of the issues that you're going to hear from the next two speakers. Anybody else?
One other question. Do you have any idea of what is the proportion of e-liquid that is U.S. made versus elsewhere?
I could not give you a quotable statistic. Initially, in the early days, around 2010, I would say it was the large majority was coming from China. In the vape shops that you see today, where they're product specific, which has really, we've seen a big change. I mean, early day it was mostly online. Now it's mostly the other direction. There's a lot less online activity and a lot more brick and mortar stores. Here in the United States, we've seen estimates as high as 15,000 brick and mortar stores. I would say that the lion's share of the liquid sold in that store is U.S. manufactured. However, we're also seeing an increase in C-store products and the spectrum of products in C-stores and Walmart and Walgreens and so on. And we're starting to see bottled products in those stores. Some of it may be U.S. manufactured. I suspect, I haven't verified it, a large portion of that is probably coming from overseas, probably from China.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So,
We need to go on, so if we could.
okay, I can ask you later.
Okay.
You can ask me later and we'll be available. Thank you very much.